Teachers who truly believed a student would get nowhere in life, were you correct? Where are they now? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I had a student in my freshman history class who was a junior. He kept failing every class and had to repeat them. Kid was always high, barely paid attention, hung out with other burnouts, and was on track to fail again. Me and the school therapist made it our mission to turn him around. She got him drug counseling, I tutored him to get him through his classes. We both talked to the lacrosse coach and worked with him to get him on the team so that he would have structure and a better group of friends. He completely turned it around, graduated, wrote me a great thank you note that I still have, and I recently ran into him in the town I teach, and he's doing great at college now. Definitely proud of him for all he did to not go down the road all signs were pointing for him. Story 2. I have never stayed at a school long enough for the kids to come back for a 10+ years anniversary meetup, so yeah, I don't really know. The kids I do know who were having, let's say, a difficult time following the curriculum, just went into trades or some sort of manual or service sector work. The ones I've occasionally run into on the street or a shop did fairly well for themselves. One was a carpenter, earning a lot more than I do. Another worked at a gym, mega buffed with 3 little girls in tow, now a gentle giant. One was a teller in a supermarket, and so on. Just because you're not cut out for the world of academics doesn't mean you're ending up in jail or a tent under an overpass. Had a couple of former students now married with kids profusely apologizing and feeling sorry for their behavior back at school. But as someone just doing a job myself, I never took anything personally, so I'd replay something like, no worries. You've done all right for yourself. Story 3. I am kind of the opposite case. Many teachers were convinced I would be an overachiever and could do anything in academia. Unfortunately, that meant no more work needed here for them. I believed them, aimed high, and failed at many occasions. Turns out, just knowing a lot of stuff as a kid and being well behaved is not all you need to succeed as an adult. I never learned to get through actual challenges because there weren't any in school. I struggled in college and white-collar work because I never learned to focus and problem solve in those settings. It took me 10 years after dropping out of school to understand this and unlearn all those false expectations they had drilled into me. I am now doing much better accepting to just be a regular Joe, happy to make a contribution on a small scale. Story 4. Not a story about me, but I used to have this classmate that constantly found himself in trouble. Every teacher hated him and dreaded having him in their classes. Recently, he popped up in my Facebook suggestions. He has a wife and a baby. He looks very happy. I hope he's doing well. Mutual friends, combinations of age, geographical locations, schools, and other information you put in your profile. Then there are the posts you interact with that they may as well, even if you don't have mutual friends. Perhaps it spots them in some of your pictures. Lots of things go into these algorithms. Story 5. A friend of mine was one of the worst students in school. Hated it with passion, nearly flunked a lot of subjects. Got told repeatedly that he is a failure and would amount to nothing. Took a lot of crap from his history teacher, who told him that he is a disappointment. He got diagnosed with ADHD at 19 and has since been on medication. Dude is one of my closest friends who studies medicine with me, is one of the best students in our entire year, and one of the best future doctors I can possibly imagine. Has an amazing girlfriend relationship, and overall, life is just going great for him. Story 6. I don't think I have ever felt that a student would get nowhere in life. It's more that they may need a different outlet or opportunity to learn something else they may be passionate about besides the academic world. Many have found what they were looking for and found success. Others have not discovered it yet and still struggle. I wish them all the very best regardless of how they did in school. This is the only way to look at it for the vast majority of kids. Who the hell am I to say they won't get anywhere just because of what they're like as a teenager or in my class? Life is long and complex, and school is just a phase of it. Important phase as far as the first 20 years go, but it's not everything to everyone. Story 7. I am a teacher who teaches adults who, for some reason, needs to redo some parts of high school. I can tell you, so many broken souls that have been put down by teachers when they were younger. They were told they could never do good in school, they shouldn't even bother trying, and they will never get their dream jobs. Wow, such a way to ruin people. And the absolute majority of them can definitely succeed in school with the right help. It's an absolute wonder to see someone regain their self-esteem and to help them see that they are fully capable. A lot of my former students have gone on to finally have their dream jobs. Oh, there are so many teachers who teach kids and young adults that I would just like to tell you to shut up about their students' future prospects and do your job and teach them the way they learn something. Story 8. Not a teacher, but my mom. I read a bunch of books on serial when I was in high school. Forensics was really interesting to me, so I read a lot about the serial that have been in the area. My mom said either she'll become a cop or a serial which is really a bit much looking back. Turns out being a serial pays way better than law enforcement. I'm just kidding, I became an evidence technician so I get to yell at cops a lot. Story 9. I was correct. He was in my class as a 7th grader, though he only showed up a handful of times. He was shot dead running with gangbangers at 2 a.m. on a school night when he was 15. They covered the shooting on the local news. They interviewed several friends who all said how he was the smartest and kindest person they knew. I wish they'd have interviewed me. He couldn't read. He didn't know basic math. He threw a desk at me and beat up another teacher. The poor mom, the one who let her son skip school 90% of the time. The one who never returned a phone call from the school and never showed up when her son was in trouble. And the one who let her son run around at 2 a.m. on a school night. She was screaming about how unfair the world was taking away her angel. Story 10. My mom and I went on a walk and she was lamenting about how bad of a mom she was raising us as kids. Back history. She and my dad divorced when I was 3, 1966. She raised 3 kids on a secretary's salary. My dad left the state to avoid paying child support, and she didn't have a great relationship with her parents who lived far from us. So on this walk, I'm listening to how bad she feels, and I had to stop her saying she raised 3 successful kids. We were all 3 happily married. All of us were employed. None of us have ever asked her for money. We all owned our own homes. We didn't have substance abuse issues and were never in jail. I turned to her after saying this and said, I think you raised 3 successful adults and did a fantastic job of it. She never saw this side of it, and I think it made her feel better. Story 11. There was a kid named Shane who went to school all 12 years with me. He was a burnout or white trash kid. He constantly got in trouble in elementary school and then got into a lot of drugs and fights when we were in high school. All that said, he was always very nice to me. I was a nerd, and in the 6th grade I picked Shane to be my partner for a project because we had to pick someone we weren't friends with. I think it meant a lot to him to be picked by a smart kid, and we did really well on that project. I also learned a lot about him, and his stepdad was a real POs. I know he was beating Shane and his mother. There was also a time in TH grade English when he was really being a jackass, and after class I stopped him in the hallway and asked if he needed a hug. He looked at me like I offered him a kidney. I didn't actually think he would hug me, but he did, and I hugged back for a long time. I truly don't think anyone had ever hugged him before. The year after we graduated high school, Shane committed suicide. I know that a lot of the people in our class thought he was mean and the teachers were irritated with how he acted out. But that guy lived in a horror movie, and literally any basic gesture of kindness could have reminded him that his life mattered. Story 12. 2 that stand out. I had a student in my R&D grade class. He was tiny and physically adorable and was constantly in trouble. I knew he'd have a rough life because his family never set limits nor held him accountable. I was the liar, never him. He was a true baby boy syndrome. I tried so hard to make the parents understand how they were harming him even though they loved him so much. I was so sad when he was at age 14 by his 2 friends after the trio robbed a gas station and fought over the stolen money. Another student in a class was a girl who looked older than most kids that age. She was funny, smart, and a real joy to teach. Her period started that year, and instead of embarrassment at the mess, she was so happy because my mama said now I can have babies. She got pregnant in 4th grade, had her first child in 5th grade and before high school, had a total of 4 children when she dropped out. Broke my heart. My company worker called one day to tell me she caught her in a park with a military guy who freaked when told she was in elementary school. Story 13. When I asked a question in class, one of my microbiology profs got so offended that he said to the lecture hall of more than 500 students that he hoped nobody would be as misguided as me and that I would not get anywhere in life, and especially never into medicine, preemed class. He went on for at least a minute about how awful I was to the whole class, which shocked the class. Dead silence after he returned to lecturing. For the record, it was just a question about something he taught that conflicted with some other things he taught. And I wasn't trying to be rude, I just didn't get it. I'd also never asked any questions before or interacted with him in person before this incident. I got into medicine. I got married to a wonderful husband. His best friend, a lady, is married to the said prof's son. I met the prof at his son's wedding as my husband's plus one. Somehow the topic of me must have taken one of his classes. Of course, he didn't remember me at all, and I wasn't ever going to bring up him yelling at me in class. At that point in life, I would be considered very successful, even for a doctor. He turned and told his son that obviously he knew that all of his students would turn out great. It was a very awkward wedding reception for me. I did tell my husband and told him to keep it to himself. I am still amused. Story 14. I once had a teacher who hated me. Not sure why, I can only think it was because it was a private school and we weren't anywhere near as wealthy as the other families. She was the only teacher I had throughout my school life who consistently found ways to give me bad marks, reasons to give punishments, and would tell me I would never amount to anything. I distinctly remember her making me stand at the front of the class to apologize for being a selfish individual at Christmas for not doing cards when I had written one to every pupil and her. I was 7. Moving on to now, I enjoy my career. It doesn't make a lot of money, but it is something I enjoy doing, and I am able to do freelance writing in my spare time, which was always a life dream. I own my own house, I have a wonderful husband, and we are expecting our first child. So I consider myself to be winning in life. Screw you, Mrs. Gravett, you miserable. Story 15. Not a teacher, but feel this should be said. In 3rd grade, I had a teacher that despised me. I have no idea why. I wasn't poorly behaved or anything. One day at the end of the day, me and another kid were the last 2 in the room. She told the other boy he needed to start working harder and pay more attention in class, or he would grow up to be a loser like Texa, me, right in front of me. Then one day, in the 8th grade, she changed grades, so I had her again. I was standing in the lunch line, and a kid pushed me, joking around. I pushed back, also joking around. She tried to have just me expelled for it. Then she moved grades again. I'm in 9th grade. My GF was in her class. Somehow the teacher found out we were dating and told her to stay away from me because I was the type that would get her pregnant and leave her. I never did anything to this woman. She destroyed my self-confidence through the entirety of my school years. And now, I'm not a deadbeat dad. I love my kid. While I didn't go to college, I make a decent living and have been married to the same woman for 20+ years. I didn't turn out the way she thought, and I bet plenty don't. But a teacher's attitude towards their students can have a profound effect on them. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.